Hello, and welcome to another insightful episode of Bona Iqiniso, where we help you realize the truth about and with software testing. I'm your host, Stefan Luckermans, and today we're diving into a controversial topic, which is traceability in Agile. We will explore if traceability is needed in Agile software development. My lovely spouse, Tracy Luckermans, will be my co-host for the day, playing the hardcore Agile supporter. Welcome, Tracy, and thank you for helping me with this episode.
Expect some severe pushback on this topic, Stefan.
First, a definition. Traceability in software development refers to tracking and linking various elements of a project throughout its lifecycle, from initial requirements to final deliverables. It ensures that each development artifact, such as requirements, design documents, code, and test cases, is connected and can be traced back to its origin and its implementation, verification, or deployment. Traceability provides transparency, aids in project management, and ensures all requirements are met and tested. Often, traceability is split into vertical traceability and horizontal traceability. Vertical traceability refers to the connections between different stages of the development process, moving from high-level business goals and needs down to the code implementation. This form of traceability links business requirements, system specifications, and design choices directly to the code that fulfills these requirements. It allows teams to verify that the original business objectives are correctly interpreted and implemented in the software. For example, vertical traceability ensures that a business requirement, such as the system must support 1,000 concurrent users, is translated into technical design specifications and eventually into code that fulfills this requirement. On the other hand, horizontal traceability refers to the connections between steps in the vertical traceability process and the tests that verify and validate each of these steps. It ensures that every element of the vertical trace, from requirements to code, is linked to test cases that confirm the correct implementation and functionality. Horizontal traceability ensures full coverage of requirements through testing, making sure that each part of the system is adequately verified. For example, in horizontal traceability, a business requirement is connected to test cases that validate both the specification and the code implementation, ensuring that the system works as intended and meets the original goals.
Stefan, what you are saying is that vertical traceability links business objectives to code implementation, while horizontal traceability ensures that each of these steps is verified and validated through appropriate testing. Both are essential for delivering high-quality software that meets all specified requirements. And if we're working on a waterfall project or a project following the V model, I would fully agree. But since I work in an Agile project, I would say your definition is somewhat archaic. We have people on the team who break down a project into epics in features and features in stories, which we consider to be our requirements. By creating test cases for the epic, features, and stories, we don't need traceability.
Tracy, you just contradicted yourself. Your product breakdown in epics, features, and stories is your vertical traceability, or at least part of it. And by creating tests for your epics, features, and stories, you established your horizontal traceability. I think the question is, do we need to speak about traceability in Agile, as we believe it is straightforward? For that, let's first have a look at the moving parts of traceability. First, there is the PBS, or Product Breakdown System.
Stefan, in Agile, we call this the backlog, and backlog refinement gives us epics, features, and stories.
Correct, Tracy. It is comparable with a PBS, except for one thing. The leaves in that product breakdown tree are the requirements, but I am glad you can provide a link to how you should work in Agile. Unfortunately, not all requirements and not all entries in your backlog concern the software product. Some of these requirements are about deliverables, or what we can call work products. For example, the user needs a user manual, the legal department needs proof of traceability, etc. These non-software products are, in fact, part of what we used to call the WBS, or Work Breakdown System. These requirements can also be part of the traceability, but most of the time, traceability is only about the product, not the work.
True, but these are indeed part of our backlog in Agile, and what we do is that we create a feature for all of that.
That's one way. But you must read the feature to know whether it is part of the product or a work product, making traceability a bit more complicated.
True, but what else can we do?
Tracy, have you ever heard of Scaled Agile Framework?
Yes, but we are not using it since our tool doesn't support it. But why do we start talking about Scaled Agile?
In Scaled Agile, also called SAFe, we have a possible layer between epics and features called capabilities. Capabilities can be software development, legal, learning, etc. Can you see where I am going? Only software development will build the software product. All features and stories under that capability are part of the product breakdown, and features and stories under other capabilities are part of the work breakdown.
But since we are not using SAFe, what is our alternative?
Before I answer, I also want to discuss sizing and how it influences the product.
Do you mean the sizing of features and stories?
I mean the size of the software development organization. Do you have one team or multiple teams? Are these teams all doing the same, or are they each specialized? Example: a functionality with an input, a calculation of sorts, and an output. Does one team make it, or does one team do the input, another the calculation, and a third the output? One team that does it all can be seen as a small to medium-sized organization, while the other solution is typical for big organizations. Big organizations may organize themselves in teams of different capabilities, benefiting from a capabilities layer between epics and features.
I see. The bigger the organization and the more diversified the teams, the better it would be to split a product into capabilities. Therefore, capabilities would not only be used to split between product and work products, but the product could also be split to reflect a team's organization or capabilities.
Tracy, you got it. Even though your organization is using something other than Scaled Agile, organizing your backlog is a good idea so that capabilities are reflected.
But how can we do that without a capabilities layer?
It's straightforward. Instead of using one epic, create an epic for each team, an epic for the legal team, and an epic for the learning team.
If you think about it, it also is more agile.
One epic to be split over several teams is what would have been done in a waterfall project. In Agile, teams are self-organizing, meaning limiting the number of dependencies during development will make these teams more efficient.
Right, but you need to combine the software of these different teams to have a working product.
Correct. In Scaled Agile, this is done by defining release trains, where features and stories of different teams are delivered together to create working software. Tracy, your organization probably has releases doing the same thing, right?
That is correct. I get this and agree that this could make the team more efficient, concentrating on what they do best without considering the dependencies with other teams. But you already guessed my question. Different teams develop all the moving parts of a product, but who is responsible for integrating it all and testing it all?
Tracy, do you know the game Domino?
Yes.
Every domino tile is unique, just like the work done by every team. Your team can look at their tiles, knowing that there are other tiles of other teams that can be combined with your tiles. Team 1 puts down one tile, Team 2 puts down a tile to combine with your tile, and Team 3 must pass because they don't have one to combine. It's the same with software. Each team delivers components to the game, takes responsibility for their components, and tests them in standalone mode using mock data. This kind of testing is often part of TDD, test-driven development. Initially, the intention was to create the test cases and afterwards create software to make the tests pass. But with the introduction of artificial intelligence, the Three Amigos, analysts, developers, and testers work simultaneously on their work products and afterwards change requirements, code, and test scripts to make them fit. Most of the tests will be automated. The code made by a team covers one or more requirements and one or more stories. Ideally, one requirement is covered by one story. All code for a functionality covers a feature, which is defined per team. If that is the approach, what is missing, Tracy?
How do you combine features and how do you test?
Correct. And the answer to that question depends again on your organization.
Some companies will have a transversal team to do all integration.
Other companies will put that responsibility with an existing team in an in-the-lead versus contributor role.
No matter which organization you have, the integration of features is also a feature which resides with the team responsible for integrating the components of the different teams and testing the integrated product.
This kind of testing is often part of BDD, behavior-driven testing, using real-like data and automating as much as possible, except if the functionality has a high-risk profile, in which case testing is best done manually.
Tracy, did you notice how we went from traceability to how to organize and structure your product?
I was about to say that too.
That proves what I said before. We don't need traceability in Agile software development.
I agree, because our product backlog refinements are now also a product breakdown system, or PBS.
Why?
Perhaps you didn't notice, but I mentioned that ideally, one requirement is represented by one story.
My original remark was that a PBS is not the same as a backlog refinement because the latter doesn't contain requirements.
I see, but who guarantees that a story only covers one requirement?
Every team does.
And if you use a template to describe a story, it will probably be the most common one.
As an actor, I must be able to do action ABC if the conditions X, Y, and Z are valid.
If you work as part of the Three Amigos, analysts will describe this as a requirement or logic rule. Developers will define it as part of a piece of code, and testers will describe it as a story to test.
And by making the Three Amigos work together, you guarantee your vertical traceability, correct?
Yes, aligning a product backlog with the product breakdown, including the requirements, means that we don't need separate processes or effort for vertical traceability.
It is already incorporated in the way your organization implements Agile software development, including horizontal traceability.
Explain that, Stefan.
I will give you an example.
Let's say we have a functionality described by a feature.
The Three Amigos worked together and created a decision table for that functionality.
Once their work is done, there are 4 results.
1. The analyst uses artificial intelligence to generate his requirements.
2. The developer generates a skeleton of his code.
3. The tester generates a skeleton of the test script.
4. The product owner defines a story for each logic rule/requirement.
When they work together like that, they ensure traceability from requirements to code and tests at the level of a feature.
This is part of BDD, where you describe, build, and test the logic of a feature and its integration with other features.
For every story created, the developer must adapt the generated code skeleton to fit the way of working in the company. Initializations, technical needs, identifiers, parameters, etc.
The tester must test these, linking their test cases to the stories.
This is part of TDD.
The company can decide whether to test the logic rule related to the story as part of TDD or BDD.
A way to determine this could be the result of risk-based testing, but that is another discussion.
In summary, we have proven vertical and horizontal traceability.
If the organization I work in limits the fact that a story is traceable to one requirement, our Agile way of working doesn't need additional effort to create traceability.
We just need to ensure that this way of working is followed to the letter.
And Tracy, do we have traceability in Agile?
Yes, but we don't necessarily need extra effort.
To summarize, create an epic per team. That way, you cover the different software development capabilities, but also the non-IT capabilities. Deliveries or releases will combine software to create a product that works. A functionality is split into features per team. Let the Three Amigos work together on the features to generate requirements, code, and tests, guaranteeing full traceability. A feature is split into stories, which relate one-on-one with requirements. A team will have a feature to integrate the features of one functionality. This guarantees vertical and horizontal traceability without the pain of having to do extra effort. thank you for joining us on this episode of Bona Iqiniso. I hope this podcast has provided valuable insights into traceability in Agile development. If you still have questions or want to comment, please send a mail to podcast@thace.org. We hope you will join us for our next podcast.